faith and reason. You know, it's this age-old debate. Are they total opposites? It can feel like you have to pick a side. But what if you didn't? What if there's a way to build like a logical bridge between the two? Well, today we're going to explore a framework that tries to do just that.
Yeah, this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? Is faith just illogical, a total leap in the dark? Or can it actually be a step you take based on real, solid reason?
Okay, so look, we're not here to try and settle this debate once and for all. That's a tall order. Instead, we're going to dive into one specific source's intellectual toolkit. Think of it as a logical framework they've built to tackle some of the absolute toughest questions a skeptic could throw at them. All right, first up, the question of evidence. This is the big one, right? The classic challenge you hear from a skeptic is, show me the proof. The whole idea that, belief is just wishful thinking if you don't have hard, verifiable facts to back it up.
So here's the core claim from the skeptic in our source material. He's basically saying, look, there's no good evidence for this stuff. It's no different than just wishful thinking. He's not looking for a warm, fuzzy feeling. He wants cold, hard facts that separate faith from what he calls, magical stories.
Okay, so the response from this framework is to kind of flip the script right from the start. Instead of treating the Bible as this magical book that you have to believe in first, the method says, hold on, let's just treat it like any other ancient document. They apply what's called textual criticism, which is really just the standard historical process for checking if any old text is authentic.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The argument is that you don't even need to open the Bible to get started. I mean, look at this. You've got secular historians from that era, guys like the Roman Tacitus and the Jewish historian Josephus, who confirmed the basic facts. They write that yes, Jesus was a real person, he was executed by Pontius Pilate, and his followers were going around claiming all these extraordinary things about him. This is huge because it anchors the whole story in real-world, verifiable history, completely outside of the religious texts themselves. And what's so powerful about this timeline is just how fast everything happened. I mean, look at the dates. The crucifixion is around 33 AD, and just a couple of years later, between 35 and 38 AD, this core creed, the basic belief, is already formed and being passed around. So when Paul finally writes it down around 55 AD, he's able to say, hey, by the way, a lot of the people who saw this stuff are still alive. You can go ask them. The takeaway here is massive. This wasn't some legend that grew over hundreds of years. It was an immediate claim made while there were still plenty of eyewitnesses who could have called it out if it were false.
Okay, so now the framework shifts gears. We're moving from history to philosophy, and we're tackling one of the biggest questions of all, the question of goodness. I mean, is there really such a thing as objective evil, or is it all just, a matter of opinion?
So the skeptic's point of view is pretty straightforward. Evil is just a label. It's a word we stick on actions we don't admire. It's totally subjective, kind of like saying you prefer chocolate ice cream over vanilla. There's no ultimate objective standard for what's right or wrong.
But here's where the framework poses a really simple but clever puzzle. To make a judgment about anything, what do you need? Let's take an example. How do you know if a line is crooked?
And there it is. You literally can't call a line crooked unless you have some concept of what straight looks like. And this is the key insight, right? The argument is that when a skeptic calls something objectively evil, like truly monstrously evil, they are, in that very moment, borrowing from the idea of an objective good, a standard that their own worldview might say doesn't exist.
All right, next up is a real mind-bender. We're diving into the question of free will. If God knows everything that's ever going to happen, are our choices even real? Or are they just an illusion? This is a classic philosophical problem, right? If God already knows you're going to pick the vanilla ice cream tomorrow, did you ever really have the freedom to choose chocolate? The skeptic's argument is that God's foreknowledge pretty much cancels out free will. We're all just actors playing out a script that's already been written.
But hold on, this framework makes a really sharp distinction between knowing something and causing something. Think about it like this. Imagine you've recorded a football game. You can watch it later, already knowing the final score. But does your knowledge of the outcome cause the quarterback to throw that game-winning touchdown? Of course not. The game happened, the choices were made, you just know what they were. The argument here is that, in a similar way, God's knowledge of our choices doesn't force us to make them.
Okay, but the skeptic comes back with a really powerful counterargument. What about hell? Is the choice to believe or burn really a free choice? It kind of feels like a threat, doesn't it? The source calls this a mugger's freedom. When a mugger says, your money or your life, is that a genuine choice? It doesn't feel like one.
And this is where the source completely reframes the whole concept. Instead of thinking of hell as some kind of cosmic torture chamber that an angry God throws people into, it's presented as the natural consequence of a choice. The idea is, if God is the source of all goodness, all life, all joy, then to choose to be separate from him is to choose to be separate from all of those things. It's not a punishment that's inflicted, it's the outcome of a choice that's being respected.
The author C.S. Lewis, who this source quotes, put it so perfectly with this line: "The gates of hell are locked from the inside." Wow. That just flips that whole mugger analogy on its head, doesn't it? It suggests that this separation isn't something people are forced into, but a state they ultimately choose and even protect for themselves. And that brings us to our final challenge, and maybe the toughest one of all, the question of suffering. I mean, if God is good and all-powerful, why is there so much pain in the world?
Yeah, and this one isn't just a philosophical puzzle. This is deeply personal. It's emotional. The skeptic's point is that a lot of suffering, think about something like cancer in a child, it seems completely meaningless. It doesn't build character, it just destroys. And a good, loving God just wouldn't create a world that works like that.
So the response from this framework is to zoom way out and look at the bigger picture. The argument is that we're living in the messy middle of a giant story. We're in Act 2, you could say. It's after the fall, which broke the world, but before the consummation, the promised future where everything is made right. And the point is, you just can't judge the whole book by one really painful chapter.
And this ties right back into that idea of free will. The framework argues that for our choices to actually mean anything, the consequences have to be real, both the good and the bad. A world where God steps in and prevents every bad thing from happening would be a world without real freedom. It would essentially be an illusion, a beautiful-looking cage. So let's just recap what we've seen. It's this complete intellectual toolkit, right? It uses historical methods for evidence, it uses philosophical arguments for morality, it makes these sharp, logical distinctions to talk about free will, and it places suffering inside this huge, overarching story.
So whether you personally find these arguments convincing or not, that's not really the main point here. The crucial takeaway is that this source presents a complete, internally consistent system. Each piece is designed to lock in with the others, building this logical structure to respond to some of life's most profound questions.
But this leaves us with one final, and I think really important question to think about. When we're talking about issues that touch on our deepest fears, our pain, our freedom, our search for meaning, can a purely logical system, no matter how consistent it is, ever really be a complete answer? That's something worth thinking about.